take a breath with me for a second and consider something strange. There's a kind of loneliness, not the loneliness of being rejected, not the loneliness of being forgotten, but the loneliness that sometimes comes from becoming more honest with yourself. Because the truth is, authenticity has a strange side effect. Sometimes it creates distance. You begin to change. Your standards rise. The way you allow people to treat you shifts. Things that once felt normal no longer sit well with you. And suddenly, you find yourself making decisions that quietly move you away from certain environments, certain conversations, and even certain relationships. Not out of anger, not out of arrogance, but out of a deeper respect of your own boundaries. Sometimes loneliness isn't the result of failure. Sometimes it's the byproduct of refusing to destroy yourself. Welcome back, my fellow strangers, to another episode of Traversing the Strange World. And this is another Monday morning with peace. Today we are going to talk about the loneliness of becoming. Maybe your worldview has shifted. Maybe the beliefs you were raised with no longer fit the person you've become. Maybe you've stepped outside of an old framework and started asking bigger questions about life, meaning, or truth. That kind of change doesn't always happen in groups. Sometimes it happens in solitude. Or maybe you're building something. An artist pouring hours into their craft. An entrepreneur investing time and energy into a vision that doesn't exist yet. While others are chasing distraction. You're somewhere alone, quietly working. And from the outside, it might look like isolation, but from the inside, it's often dedication. The strange thing about growth is that it doesn't always feel like progress. Sometimes it feels like distance. Distance from old habits. Distance from old expectations. Distance from the person you used to be. But every meaningful path has moments like this. Moments where the crowd thins out. Moments where the road gets quieter. And those moments certainly can feel lonely. But they're also where something important begins to take shape. The person you're becoming. Now, most social groups run on unspoken expectations. There's the one in the group who keeps the peace. The one who makes the jokes. The one who goes along with everything. The one who never challenges the group. Without realizing it, most of us spend years quietly playing one of those roles. Not because we're fake, but because it's easier to belong than it is to disrupt the pattern. But something changes when you start becoming more honest with yourself. You start saying no to things that once felt automatic. You stop laughing at things that aren't actually funny. You stop participating in conversations that revolve around tearing other people down, gossiping, and sometimes you simply start choosing different priorities. Training instead of partying. Creating instead of consuming. Building instead of drifting. And when that happens, something occurs. The script breaks. People notice. Not always consciously, but they feel it. Because When one person stops playing their old role, it subtly changes the dynamic of the whole group. Sometimes people respect it. Sometimes they even become inspired. But other times, there's distance. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because authenticity rearranges the social landscape. And that rearranging can feel lonely at times. And there's something important to remember. You weren't meant to spend your entire life playing a character that was written for you by somebody else. At some point, every person has to decide whether they want to remain part of the script or step outside of it and start writing their own story. Remember, it is their story. Even though when something becomes part of your identity, it feels permanent. But oftentimes when people say, "This is just who I am," or who we are, it was handed to us long ago before we had the wisdom to examine it. Family expectations, social roles, labels from childhood. Maybe you were told you were the quiet one, or the troublemaker, or the lazy one, or the one who never finishes anything. After hearing something enough times, people start carrying it like a name. They stop asking whether it's something they want to keep. Instead, they defend it. This is just who I am. But sometimes what we call identity is really just familiarity. It's the version of ourselves that people around us got used to. And the uncomfortable truth is that some people will try to keep you inside that version. Not always maliciously, but because it keeps the world predictable. But if you change, the story they have about you has to change too. And that can make people uneasy. So sometimes they repeat the old script. That's just how you are. You've always been like that. And if we're not careful, we start believing it. We trade the person we could become for the person everyone already recognizes. But becoming yourself requires something different. It requires the courage to question the identity you inherited. Ask a difficult question. Is this really who I am? Or is this the version of me that other people got comfortable with? Maybe you started to notice that people are not nearly as fixed as they claim to be. We think of ourselves as solid, defined, permanent, but in reality, most of what we call personality is just pattern. Patterns of thought, patterns of reaction, patterns of habit repeated so many times that they start to feel like identity. That habits can change, patterns can be interrupted. And when you step away from the noise long enough, you start to see something more clearly. You start to see that the person you are today is not just a finished product. It's the accumulation of what you've practiced, the thoughts you've repeated, the narratives you've repeated, the environments you've stayed in, and the routines you've allowed to shape you, which means something powerful. It means you are not just how you are what you repeatedly do. And once you see that, a deeper question starts to form. If my life is being shaped by habits, then what habits do I actually want shaping me? What kind of life do I want to build? What kind of person do I want to become? Sometimes those questions require stepping back, getting quiet, separating yourself from constant noise or expectations, opinions, and social gravity. Because only in that quiet space can you begin to ask honestly, what kind of world I want to live in? What values actually resonate with me? Are the values I inherited truly mine, or were they simply the values of the environments I happened to grow up in? And once you start asking those questions seriously, you realize something. The life you want may not already exist. The values you want may not be perfectly molded around you. The person you want to become may not appear automatically. that doesn't mean they're impossible. Because identity is not just something we inherit, it's something we forge, choice by choice, habit by habit, day by day. When you begin changing your habits, you don't immediately become the person you're trying to be. You stumble, you're inconsistent, you feel awkward doing things that other people seem to do effortlessly. But that's the part we often forget. The habits we associate with who we are usually just the ones we've practiced the longest. But practice shapes us. The patterns we repeat, they become the grooves our lives run in, which means something hopeful. It means the person you want to become doesn't appear overnight, but they do appear gradually through repetition, through showing up again, through practicing new habits long enough that they begin to feel natural, long enough that they start to feel like you. Here's the part you might not hear often. When you start walking in a new path, the road can get quiet. Not everyone understands what you're doing. Not everyone recognizes the person you're becoming. And sometimes the distance between you and the crowd grows wider. You spend more evenings working on something most people don't see. You spend more time reflecting, questioning, building, and learning. And the strange thing about that road is that from the outside, it can look lonely. But from the inside, feel like alignment. Like you're finally walking in a direction that belongs to you. The world has many roads. Some are crowded, some are noisy, some are paved with approval and familiarity. But the road towards becoming yourself is often quieter. It winds through long stretches of uncertainty, moments of doubt, moments of solitude. But it's also where something real begins to form. Not the person the world expected you to be, not the role you were handed when you were young, but the person you consciously chose to become. Remember, my fellow stranger, you are in the process of becoming. You're not lost, and becoming has always been a solitary art, because the person you're meant to be isn't found in the noise of the crowd. It's discovered on the quiet road when you finally begin walking towards yourself. Alright, my fellow strangers, I hope you enjoyed this installment of Monday Mornings with Peace. If you're listening on Spotify, like and save, as well as Apple Podcasts. If you're listening on YouTube, like and subscribe. Alright, until next time, my fellow strangers, let's tread on down the road. Let's traverse down the road. And let's keep traversing this strange world. Let's remember always to be inquisitive, always to be introspective. Let's remember to be neighborly to folks. We're just kind of thrown into this life thing. So at the end of the day, we're all just strangers in a strange land. Until next time, peace.